This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Presented by GSMC Podcast Network. My name is Chris Blades, and before I get started here today, I want to make sure I remind you guys, as always, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast. Please make sure you never miss an episode. It'll help make sure you're on top of when we drop all our latest stuff. Also, if you could please as well give us a 5-star rating, write a nice review. It'd be very appreciated, very helpful, as I'll see what you guys like, what you guys dislike, the ways we can improve, all that fun stuff. And also, if you're on social media, we're on social media. So you can find us there: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We can talk, we can chat, we can debate, we can discuss, and it's a sad day for minor league baseball. I mean, not everyone's the biggest baseball fan. Some of you guys might not even have been paying attention to this at all. Which, I mean, if you weren't, I don't blame you. But if you are a baseball fan, then you know about what's happening to the minor leagues, in that the 2020 minor league season will be canceled due to the Rona. Now, I mean, this isn't something that comes as a shock or a surprise, per se. I mean, this is kind of what they were always kind of figured was going to happen, but it became official today. And it's officially sad to see. So, baseball's minor leagues canceled their season Tuesday because of the coronavirus pandemic, and the head of their governing body said more than half of the 160 teams are in danger of failing without government assistance or private equity injections. The National Association of Professional Baseball Leagues, the minor league governing body, made the long-expected announcement. We are a fans and stands business. We do not have TV or national TV revenue. Association President Pat O'Connor said during a digital news conference, there was a conversation at one point, well, can we play without fans? And that was one of the shortest conversations in the last 6 months. It just doesn't make any sense. O'Connor estimated that 85 to 90% of revenue is related to ticket money, concessions, parking, and ballpark advertising. Miners drew 41.5 million fans last year for 176 teams in 15 leagues, averaging a little over 4,000 fans per game. MLB teams are planning a 60-game regular season, obviously, and most of their revenue will come from broadcast money. I mean, though, in fairness, I believe the number was like 40. I think they said they're losing from not being able to have fans in the stands. So, not nothing. But, definitely less than 85 to 90%. Did not know it was that high. Had a conversation with the commissioner, and we were unable to find a path that allowed us to play games. O'Connor said it wasn't an acrimonious decision on our part. O'Connor said many minor league teams have received money through the Federal Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act. That was a band-aid on a hemorrhaging industry. He said many of our clubs have gone through 1, 2, maybe 3 rounds of furloughs. In our office here, we've had varying levels of pay cuts between senior management staff, and we furloughed some individuals as well, and are just about to enter a second round of furloughs. He hopes the passage of H.R. 7023, which would provide $1 billion in 15-year federal loans from the Federal Reserve to businesses that had 2019 revenue of $35 million or less, and have contractual obligations for making lease, rent, or bond payments for publicly owned sports facilities, museums, and community theaters. In addition, the professional baseball agreement between the majors and the minors expires September 30th, and MLB has proposed reducing the minimum affiliates from 160 down to 120. So, clearly the pandemic has had quite the effect on the minors, which is sad to see, unfortunately. The MLB told clubs to retain expanded 60-player pools, of which 30 players can be active during the first 2 weeks of the season, starting in late July. Congress said the financial impact of the pathogen might extend into 2023. As serious as the threat from Major League Baseball was, this threat from the coronavirus, it transcends any list that anybody wants to make with respect to the possibility of teams not being around in the future. So, that's the unfortunate story of minor league baseball in this country this year. And it's really just sad to see all around, mainly because as it was mentioned in the article, even that wasn't one thing that wasn't necessarily mentioned in the article, is that obviously with no minors, that means obviously there's no season, that means there's no teams, and that alone is going to set back franchises years, potentially. If you're looking at a team like the Marlins, for instance, who weren't going to be very good, aren't probably going to be very good this year, but I mean, they didn't have, like, I don't know how many, like, top level prospects they had, but you were like, all right, this is how we're going to build our team, this is how we're going to get better. We're going to maybe have to trade some of these guys for some better players or whatever, but we're going to get better through these prospects and building them up and getting them good, getting them major league ready, all that stuff. Now, where you go, because especially since but every team has like 3 A-ball affiliates, and that's not even including rookie leagues or anything like that. So, well, I guess take that, but you might even have 4 A-ball affiliates. Some you have like low A, high A, double A, triple A, I think, and then like I said, like rookie ball and some other stuff. So there's a lot. Regardless, it's a lot of players that are now no longer a part of organizations. And all right, the 60-player pool, that's cool. So if you for the top guys, in your organization, but again, 60 players for an entire organization is nothing. And that's coupled with the fact they already had a draft that instead of being like what it was normally, like 30, 40 rounds, was 5 rounds. Like I said, normally you're expecting to draft, like I said, like 30, 40 guys, add them to your organization. This year you added 5. And a lot of these guys aren't even going to play this year because there's no minors. So it's like, you drafted them just to, I guess, have their rights, really, but they're not going to play baseball again until next year. It's really crazy, and like they said in the article, they were talking about cutting the number of teams down before this, and now they're going to lose money. So it's like, all right, well, yeah, it would make I don't say it makes sense, but it would be reasonable for them to be like, let's cut this down. Just because it's like, in theory, it's like, why do you need 160 teams? We don't need to be paying that much for all that. And it's unfortunate, but then like you were saying, like this makes that pathway a lot easier. Now it's like, all right, well, we're already without the team, so we already know what it's like without you. So if we decide we don't need to bring you back, I mean, it's a very easy and simple thing. And that's the unfortunate part, is that like when you think of these lower level teams, like even like, all right, like the G League, for example, they're not going to finish out their season, but like their season has already it wasn't done, but like they had played most of it already. So it's not like as big of a deal with that. Like they had already gone through a majority. This is getting ready to start up. So you're basically losing an entire season. Not basically. You're losing an entire season of baseball for these lower level guys that if they're not MLB ready, they need that season for development, to work on things, to hone different aspects of their craft in order to eventually get to that major league level. And now this completely sets them back. And it's just going to be tough. It's going to be tough all around. It's tough for those players. And now it's like, is my career on hold? Is my career over? Like, you really don't know. Because there's no, on top, like I said, there may be less teams next year. But also, if you're not a part of that 60-man roster or whatever, like, who knows if you're even going to get brought back? Because who knows what minor league baseball is going to look like next year? Like, you might not get brought back, and then And like I said, during the meantime, which is the right now, you need to find you need to find a job, I would think, unless you're just going to live at home with like a parent or a friend or a family member, whoever. If you can afford to do that, good for you, but not everybody can afford to do that. Some people need this money to pay rent and pay bills, student loans, other things they may need to pay for in their everyday life. So you got to find a job now, and it's just like, all right, do I find a job just to bide my time, or do I find a job like, all right, maybe baseball isn't my thing, or isn't going to be the thing that makes it big for me. Like I said, if you're like a 30-year-old in the majors, in the minors, got like a kid or two, may only be at like the AA level or whatever. Do you just like hang it up now? Or do you still hold out hope for the next season that maybe you'll be able to get something going and get your big break and get to the majors or whatever? Or maybe you just like I said, maybe you just love baseball that much and you want to keep playing. Who knows? But like I said, now you don't have you can't really do that. You have to make a decision with something. You can't just not have a job, especially since not every organization is paying their players. I know more of them came around on that, but it's not everybody, and if they are paying them, it's not like they're getting paid a whole lot. So that might not be enough, especially when everybody's at home all the time now. Like you're home, your partner may be home, the kids may be home, if you have any. Like you got mouths to feed, you got things to pay for, and you don't have a job right now. So, like I said, it's unfortunate. And then for the teams, as I was saying before, like now they are set back because all the potential prospects or trade assets or whatever that they had in their farm system it's not completely barren. Like there's still some things in the cupboard, but it's a lot less than they're supposed to be. So how's that gonna look? If you're like an aging team, if you don't do anything big in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, how's your team gonna look in 5 years down the road? Like I said, this season is gonna set everybody back to a degree. Now we'll see how well people can handle it, but everybody's gonna get set back to varying levels due to this pandemic, and there are no minors, and like basically having to get rid of their system for like a year. And then who knows if they even decide to bring everybody back. Maybe they'll just be like, all right, we only need this X number of people or Y number of people. Like you're just like, we don't need it. And like I said, it's just the trickle down effect of this getting canceled is like kind of big. Especially since it's not like, obviously everybody has a contract, but a lot of these contracts are only for not a lot of these minor league guys are in like longer term contracts, like 2-3 year contracts. Like most of these guys may be like a year, 2 tops, I think. If I'm wrong, please correct me. It's not like when you're in the majors, you got like people are on like 10-year contracts or whatever. Sorry, even if they didn't have a season this year, and then they might not have a season next year. Like you're still gonna like, all right, there's still some sort of obligation the team has in terms of paying you. And with these guys, they're like, hey, if we pay you, we'll pay you a little bit, but like we're not gonna pay you, and then we're not gonna pay you that much, I should say, and then next year, you don't have to bring you back. So like I said, there's just like a real cloud of uncertainty around the future of minor league baseball, which is highly unfortunate. Until I read that article, I did not realize that they required or that they made so much from the fans. But it makes sense. Like minor league baseball isn't on TV. It's not on like local channels. It's not on national channels. The stadiums already aren't that big anyway, so no one's gonna pay big TV. Maybe he's going to make a big TV deal for minor league baseball. It's just not going to happen. Obviously, the futures games and little things like that are on like MLB Network, or like I don't think any. They might be. I don't think they're on Fox. Maybe they are. I don't know, but they're at least on MLB Network. Sorry, there's that, but that's like one game, and that's only a select number of players. Not everybody obviously makes the futures game. So it was surprising, but it also was like, it kind of makes sense. Like, when you think about it, like how was they getting any money other than by the fans? And if they're not having any fans, then they're literally making no money. So it's unfortunate, but I can see why they're just like, this isn't worth it. even if they could try to play a season, which they probably can't. I don't. Well, I mean, most of them travel by bus anyway, but that's a lot to ask people to do. I mean, it's just like, what's the if you're gonna be in the red by such a wide margin on something that already doesn't make a whole lot of money, I imagine, to begin with. It's like, what's the point? Honestly. So, like I said, it's unfortunate, but this is kind of what's happening. The pandemic is going to cause massive changes in industries and within companies for the foreseeable future. I mean, they're not the only. The miners aren't the only league or the only entities or companies or organizations that have to deal with furloughs and letting people go or having to kind of configure what the future looks like for them. I imagine I already know there are some companies that are saying, like, we're not bringing anybody back into the office till next year, which, I mean, they're better to be safe than sorry. But also at the same time, it's like some of these companies may realize, like, look, if we can do the same amount of work or just as good of work and not have to pay massive rent to be in this big office building, why would you? Or if we were like, hey, we can do the same amount of work but with less staff, why would we hire more staff? So, like I said, the trickle-down effect of this pandemic on all industries and all businesses and just the economy as a whole is going to be kind of crazy to see as we flesh it out over the next few years. But it's unfortunate for those minor leaguers. I'm sorry for them, definitely, because you don't ever want to see careers cut short like this when it's like literally nothing you can do. Like, even if you get injured, like, there's not much you could do, depending, but at least you're out there doing something. Literally, there's no way you could have changed this at all. There's nothing you could have done differently. Nothing that really could be done in order to fix this. And now, like I said, your whole career is just kind of up in the air. So, it's unfortunate, but it's where we are at this moment. And speaking of up in the air, as we talked about, the possibility of there being or not being a football season, a college football season this year is very prevalent, but the Ivy League is trying to find fixes or ways around that. So we'll talk about an idea that they're suggesting and maybe how they could adjust their season to make sure that they get it played. So we'll talk about that right after the break. Stay right there.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Unsurprisingly, the Ivy League being the conference that decides they want to try to think outside the box and come up with different possibilities, different solutions to the Rona issue that is going to plague this season, regardless of if it's played or not. So yeah, like I said, that's unsurprising, but their possibilities are pretty interesting. So I thought we'd get into that. So the Ivy League is considering two possibilities for an altered football season due to the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, including foregoing the entire fall in favor of a 7-game conference-only spring season that would begin in April and conclude in mid-May, according to a sourced report. This is This is on ESPN. So according to the report, the Ivy League is also considering opening the 2020 season in late September with a 7-game schedule against only conference opponents. The Ivy League normally plays a 10-game schedule that tentatively begins this season on September 19th. The spokesperson from the Ivy League would not confirm the report Monday, but issued the following statement. The Ivy League Council of Presidents has been meeting frequently via video conference, obviously, this spring. The statement read, Should the Council of Presidents make a determination regarding the status of intercollegiate athletic activity at Ivy League schools, the decision will be communicated first to Ivy League directors of athletics, coaches, and student athletes, followed by the wider Ivy League campus, community, media, and public. As college football players throughout the FBS have returned to voluntary workouts throughout this month, several schools have reported multiple positive test results for COVID-19 since it began testing on June 1st. Clemson has conducted 430 tests with a total of 47 positive results. Houston's voluntary workouts came to a screeching halt after 6 athletes across different sports tested positive and were symptomatic. At Kansas State, 90 players initially tested negative when they returned to campus on June 8th, but within a week, 14 players were positive after a second round of testing. The Wildcats were forced to shut down for 2 weeks. Ivy League schools haven't opened yet, and when they do, their athletes don't participate in summer workouts like other conferences. Executive Director Robin Harris told ESPN in a recent interview, "Candidly, we benefit by not having these workouts typically in the summer, and certainly not now with our campuses not open yet, or not yet open," he said. Or she said, it doesn't say. No, she said. Okay, was it she? So we certainly are not going to have these workouts and everything. So we are going to learn as others come back and we see what happens, she said. We're going to benefit. I'm on the call with our commissioners several times a week, and we share information on our athletic directors are talking to their counterparts within the state, within the city, because there's no playbook for this, obviously. So, yeah, it's actually a good, it kind of makes sense why they wouldn't have the voluntary workouts, because, they're all about athletics and, academics and stuff. There's no reason to bring these kids up for voluntary workouts in June, like for what? But that's actually going to be a thing that works in their favor, because they won't have to worry about this, if at all, until people are allowed back on campus fully. Now, that may make it a little worse, because now you got to do testing in theory, you'd have to do more testing on a wider scale, because you can now have more people on the campus. Though I guess they're not going to be testing everybody on the campus, I guess, unless you need or want to get tested. But you would think it'd be easier to control it if there's an outbreak, if there's a limited amount of student athletes on the campus, as opposed to if your campus is fully open back up, which, we'll see. But if it was fully open back up, then again, you can't really control it. You can test your athletes and stuff, but you if there's an outbreak within the team, it's going to be harder to corral and hard to make sure that doesn't spread, because now you're dealing with thousands of students on campus at the same time. So that part would be a little interesting. There's you can read the rest of the article on ESPN, like on the app or the website if you wanted to. But I just want to talk about the two possibilities. So the first one being the 7-game only schedule. Technically I think both of them were only 7 games, right? Lost article for a second. But yes, I think both of them were only 7 games. I could be wrong though, but I'm pretty sure both of them were only 7 games. So the first one would start in late September, 10 games, excuse me. The September one was the 10 games. It started in late September or mid-September. Played 10 games, so 10 weeks. I'm assuming you probably don't have a bye baked in there, because you should, but you probably can't afford it. Depending, because if you're talking about, if you had a bye, and with those 10 games, we're talking about you're going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're talking about going into the first week of December. If you had, if it was 11-week, 10-game schedule. Which is basically what it already is. So that would be, you would think, a little difficult, only because of there's the whole worry of the second wave coming, assuming we ever get out of this first wave. So the second wave coming back around flu season. So once it gets colder out and all that stuff starts to kick back up, people are afraid of that. So kind of, I think my sister, she's going to like grad school, and I think they like come home for Thanksgiving and they don't come back until the next year. Like they're just like, all right, once we hit Thanksgiving, like you guys can just stay home. Because again, you're worried about the flu season and potentially an outbreak during that time, so you're going to want to try to keep people away from campus so you don't obviously have a big outbreak within the school. So that's interesting. I mean, that's basically what it would be, and that's what I imagine they're going to try to do if there was a normal season. And that's probably going to be a little difficult just because of the whole, like I said, the idea of having college sports when campuses aren't fully open sounds like really crazy to me. Just because how do you determine, like, all right, it's too dangerous for these other students just to go to class, do normal things, learn, interact with students, whatever. But if you're an athlete, it's completely fine. Like that, like, logically, that doesn't make any sense. And it's not just a football thing. It's for any fall sport, like soccer. I'm pretty sure soccer is in at least I think women's soccer is in the fall. And both soccer might be in the fall, but whatever, all the other fall sports. It's like, how do you justify any of them coming back? And even in the fall, like basketball starts up, or I guess, the first semester basketball starts up. At least with the workouts and like preseason, stuff like that. I think even started regular seasons like December. So yeah, like how do you justify having them on campus when that time comes? If, again, no one else is allowed on campus, like how does that make any sense? And we're only really, I guess you're running across each season when we get there. So we're trying to see how football season is going to work first, then we'll get to basketball and the other sports as we go across from fall to winter to spring, stuff like that. But it's like, how can you justify having college sports if it's not safe for college students, just general students, to be on campus? It seems kind of contradictory to me, at least. But again, I'm not the one in charge. I'm not the one that's going to lose out on a bunch of money. There's no college football season, so there is that. But to their spring idea, I don't hate it. So it's only 7 games, which, I mean, in grand scheme of things, isn't a whole lot. But I mean, you kind of got to make do with what if you can even play 7 games, I think people would take that at this point. Especially for college. But that'll be interesting to me. I mean, again, it's Ivy League, so they're not really too worried about the draft. Like the NFL draft, obviously. But that'd be an interesting thing because I feel like if someone were, like if they say there was a good enough player in the Ivy League to get drafted, not completely shocking, but like if that were possible, what does that person do? Or how does it work? Like, can you get drafted and still finish out the season, or are you forced to shut it down from there? Is it up to you? Like, I feel like they'd have to figure that part out. Because again, just saying we're gonna have our season in April, which, in theory, I'd probably have to move it up. I'd probably move it up to March. But if you want to have your season then, all right, go for it. That by all means. That seems like that might be a decent option for even the FBS to follow. Where if all right, if we can't play it in the fall, just start in the spring. Hopefully, again, there's no snow in some of these places, but hey, it's football. You can play in cold weather, and just play conference games and that's it. Because I mean, in theory, conferences are based geographically, so you shouldn't have to travel that far. I think in this article they said the farthest travel for the Ivy League, the furthest trip is Penn to Denmark, and that's a 6-hour ride. So, that's, again, the 6-hour drive is a long drive. Regardless. So that's going to be tough for the athletes. And normally you would stay overnight and things like that. But again, we'll actually talk about that a little bit later. About NFL teams talking about if they're going to try to do this, how they're going to try to do the travel for their season. But, like I said, the spring idea isn't terrible just because you need to have a plan B. At the end of the day, this is what all sports leagues need. They need a plan B. You can't just be we're going to try to play the season, because if you don't, then you're out of luck. But you need to have an idea in case, all right, if we can't do this in the fall, what are we going to do? I mean, other than obviously you could just cancel it outright. But that's not going to work. They're going to try to play a season somehow. So they need to have a backup plan. And I feel like the spring idea isn't a terrible backup plan. Again, if you just configure it for the conference. Because, I mean, that's, at the end of the day, that's like the biggest thing is conferences, though, again, FBS is different because you can get the bowl games and stuff like that. You're losing all that money. That's a completely separate point. That's why I know NCAA is going to try to do it normally. I mean, the FBS is going to try to do it normally. Don't know if it's going to work because, again, in case they're spiking. And while it is definitely true that fatality rate pretty low overall, that doesn't mean everybody that catches it that's a student athlete will survive because the fatality rate isn't 0. So that means some people, obviously, there's people that are losing their life to it every day, not just in this country but around the world. And B, there are people that are surviving that either don't feel like themselves for a long period of time or have some sort of permanent damage, whether it's to their lungs or other organs, or now they're on an inhaler, different things. I've seen different stories about that, the people that even survive but aren't perfect post Rona. That's another aspect that I think people kind of don't consider, especially when you're talking about athletes here. And it's like, it's bad enough if you're just a normal person whose life is altered for forever. Now we're talking about athletes trying to handle this, come back and play a season still, when we don't really know the long-term effects of having this and how it can affect you and your ability to fight off other diseases or your likelihood to catch other diseases or different, like I said, different long-term effects to your health it may have. Like there's no way to know because it's new. So, I mean, I'm saying you can't live in fear, but at the same time, you can't just assume that, all right, just because you didn't die, like you're good. Like no, that's not how these things work. Again, if you're asymptomatic, all right, that's a different story, but not everybody that catches it is asymptomatic. So because of that, when you look at these symptomatic people, and that's why I think it was Houston that had to shut down because they had players that were symptomatic. I think Kansas State did the same thing. All right, so since that's probably going to happen, like that doesn't mean all those people are going to be fine. Just like you quarantine them for like 2 weeks and boom, they're good, perfect health, they can go right back. And even with that, again, if you're doing that, you haven't run, you haven't worked out, you haven't done any of those things in 2 weeks. You can't just be able to be like, all right, after these 2 weeks, I'm good. Like, again, for athletes, it's going to take you at least, I would say, take you 3 weeks to a month if you get it to come back from it. Because you got to build everything back up from there. You can't just be like, especially if you're symptomatic. You can't just be like, all right, I'm clear of all the symptoms, I can just go back and do. Because no, now you're talking about potentially injuring yourself and causing other sorts of damage. It's a whole mess. So, like I said, the NCAA is going to try to play it, but they need to have a plan. And it seems like at least the Ivy League has a plan. Will it work? We'll see. But at least they have a plan, which is a start, in my opinion. It's not, like I said, it's not a terrible plan. I think, in theory, because by then we should have it more under control, you would hope. We don't know what the future holds, because, didn't really expect all this to be happening in the first 6 months of the year. And like I said, that means we still have 6 months to go, so who knows what that has in store for us. But, that being said, the plan isn't terrible. It's just that, like, when you talk about the FBS teams, like, how would that affect the draft? And again, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I was just saying, I think that's probably the spring football makes more sense to me than trying to rush through a season in the fall and hope you don't have to shut it down. Because it's too many people, it's too many universities, schools that all have different rules, or how, like, some people are coming back, some people are doing more virtual stuff. So it's not uniform across the board. So you're saying, like, how do you determine that, like what's the right thing to do? Because it's not uniform. That's why it's easier for the Ivy League to be like, yeah, we're going to do this, because they're kind of like their own separate entity or their own separate group. So it's like, all right, we're going to do this. Y'all can do whatever y'all want, but we're going to do this. But I'm just saying the NCAA has to have those type of plans. I imagine they're having these conversations. It would be foolish for me to think that they aren't. I'm just saying, hopefully they come up with something. Because I want to believe, but I don't feel like the NFL is going to have a good backup plan if something were to happen. I really don't. I mean, we'll see. You're talking about they're going to exhaust all options and stuff like that, but the likelihood of the NFL coming up with a good plan on how to handle this is probably pretty shaky, in my personal opinion. But hey, I comment and then I judge after the fact. So we'll see what the NFL's plan is whenever that comes. I mean, it should be coming out soon, right? Because it's about to be July, or I guess when you guys are hearing this, it is July 1st. So that means training camp is this month. Like, you should have your plan in place before then. Like, full health and safety protocol plan for not just training camp, but for the season. But again, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But yeah, speaking of sports leagues trying to, like, having plans, the NBA is putting in more plans or more practices to try to display social justice and show that they're on the player's side when it comes to reforming different things and battling systemic racism and oppression in this country. But the way they're doing it is another way in which I don't like. Shock, I know. But yeah, so we'll talk about what their new plan is and why I think it's just all kind of like, all right, we're doing the most now. So we'll talk about it right after the break. Stay right there.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
GSMC Sports Podcast presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So, apparently, the NBA and their players' union plan to paint Black Lives Matter on the courts in Orlando. This is, again, from ESPN. The NBA and the National Basketball Players Association are planning to paint Black Lives Matter on the court inside both sidelines in all three arenas that the league will use at the Walt Disney World Resort when it resumes the 2019 season late next month in Orlando, Florida, league sources told ESPN. The WNBA is also discussing painting Black Lives Matter on the court when it begins its abbreviated 2020 season at the IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. Also said sources also said some WNBA players have suggested in talks with the league higher ups that players wear warm shirts with "Say Her Name" on them in an attempt to keep attention on the female victims of police brutality. Makes sense, including Breonna Taylor, who was shot and killed by police in March in her home in Louisville, Kentucky, and the cops involved with her case still haven't been arrested yet. So there's that. Players have insisted that the fight for racial equality and social justice be a central part of the NBA's return to play in the WNBA's new season. Several NBA players consider skipping the NBA's resumption to focus on social justice issues. Several WNBA players have actually done that, including Renee Montgomery and Natasha Cloud. Renee Montgomery of the Atlanta Dream and Natasha Cloud of the Washington Mystics. They are sitting out the season, as I said, to focus on social justice. So, let's step aside before I get back to the article. That's one thing. I know I tried to talk on this before when I mentioned, or touched on this a couple episodes ago, and I mentioned all the different WNBA players that are sitting out or even have sat out in the past, i.e. Maya Moore. Shout out to them. A lot of NBAs were like, oh yeah, we're going to sit out. But so far, no one has sat out for that reason. People have sat out because of the Rona or to be with family, different things like that. But no one's been like, I'm going to sit out to fight this. And now, that doesn't mean that they're not going to fight it while they're sitting out, but I give a lot of credit for these women athletes, or these women basketball players, for putting their money where their mouth is in the phraseology, obviously, because they're not making money while they're not playing. But just like just standing behind what they believe in. 'Cause, I mean, it's easy to say, I'm going to sit out, but they're actually going to do it. So again, shout out to them. And I mean, same thing with I know Megan Rapinoe was like the first non-football player, I think at least in this country, to kneel like 4 years ago when Colin Kaepernick did it. I know, like I mentioned already, the Women's Soccer League, they had all their players kneel during the anthem in their first game on Saturday, wore Black Lives Matter shirts. So, I mean, the NBA and their players say they're going to do a lot of things. They do a lot of things. I'm not trying to talk down on them, but a lot of women and a lot of women athletes are already doing some of the things that they claim that they will do at the same time. So, again, you just want to make sure you give everyone their proper appreciation for the fight. Because, like I said, WNBA players are actually, or have actually sat out a season or 2 seasons to fight for social justice, while the NBA players have just said they would. So, I'm not saying there's no one that's going to do that, but I just want to give those women their props for actually being willing to be like, no, I'm going to sit out, and this is the reason why. It's not because they're own, it's not because of anything else. It's because I want to fight this during this time. Again, more power to you. I have all the respect in the world for anybody that's willing to do that. On a conference call with reporters Friday, the leaders of the NBA and the NBPA said the league and the union were discussing several ways to use the NBA's platform in Orlando to call attention to racial equality, or I guess racial inequality, that should probably say, social justice and police brutality. Over the weekend, Chris Paul, president of the Players Association, told ESPN about the jerseys, which we talked about in the last episode. And yeah, so the painting of Black Lives Matter on the court, as they mentioned in the article, they said they want to. What was it? They talked about ways that they could call attention. As we mentioned with the jersey thing, now calling attention does little to nothing for me at this moment. Now, this is a worse idea than the jersey thing. At least the jersey thing I could get, because you can say a bunch of different things on the back. You can touch on any of the different social issues going on out there, any different social issues that may be personal to you. So that's one thing. So, okay, like I said, if they were able to find a way to tie money to the jersey thing, like again, just like sell them, because I know people would buy them, and then go from there, I think like that would seal up that idea. It's like, all right, this is a good action item that they can use while down in Orlando. Painting Black Lives Matter on the court, like I said, while it may technically call attention, it has no effect on me personally. Again, it's going to have effect on some people being like, oh, I can't watch because that's on the court. Like, come on, it's not that serious. And again, if that's really what turned you off, then like, why are you still watching basketball now? Because they've been talking about this for years. The NBA stance has not changed. Granted, they haven't written it. They haven't written it on the court or had it painted out on the court before this year. But I mean, this is always the way they felt. They've said it before. Their players have said it before. So if this is really that big of an issue to you, you would have left the NBA before like this week. So, or I guess this upcoming restart of the season, like that was whatever to me. But my point is, this action specifically does nothing but call attention. And while that's necessarily not a bad thing, as we've already discussed, or as I've already discussed, it's now time for tangible action items. Like Netflix. I believe it was earlier, this is Tuesday. So earlier Tuesday, they said they were going to pledge to donate $100 million, I think it was, to like black-owned or black banks, which could provide for some actual change or some actual I guess could provide the opportunity to change some of these communities, give out small business loans, give out different things, allow people to get access to different financial tools that they may not have been able to get at these bigger corporations for whatever reason. Like maybe they weren't able to do that. And I know a lot of these black banks are kind of underfunded compared to like the Chases and the Bank of Americas and the PNCs of the world. Like they don't have nearly the amount of capital and things like that these two banks have. So they can only give out a certain amount of loan or a certain amount of like, I don't know exactly all the bank terms, but you know what I mean. They can only do but so much in the community. But now Netflix decided to, over some years, obviously I don't think they're doing it all at one time, give $100 million to black banks. I don't think it's going to be one because I know there's a couple. I don't think there's only one. So to be able to like spread that out however they want to spread it out, that can do a lot of good in the community. And that's like really like, all right, like I said, putting out the statement, like having things on like Netflix could, I think they put out a statement. You could have things on your, like on, when you go to Netflix, like they had like the whole like black excellence or celebrating blackness or just different documentaries or movies or shows about black people and like what they go through and trying to educate people on what they go through for those that may not know. Like they had that on Netflix. That was like, you normally how you have like different categories like, oh, comedy or like TV show or drama or whatever. Like that was a category. And that was a thing that they could do. Like, all right, if you're going to be on Netflix, you can at least try to educate yourself. I know there's a lot of movies or different, like I said, documentaries, whatever, that people were watching during this time to better educate themselves on things they may not have known about, both black and non-black people. Because again, I know I'm a person that hasn't seen every single black movie or documentary there is to see. So I could have, if I chose, taken the time to watch some of those things. I didn't watch all of them, but I mean, I could have if I wanted to. Just because, again, Netflix kind of put them all in one spot, which is good on them. So that's another thing they could have done. But again, this giving of the money is a real tangible item that can make real tangible change. Painting Black Lives Matter on the court does none of that. For me, it's just another. It's not another, but it's a performative act. Like, all right, we're gonna stay and try to show like we're with you, even though again everyone knows where the NBA stands on this. But like, what are we actually doing in the communities to make changes or improve lives? Outside of, again, obviously the whole like, oh, they like give a lot of black people wealth because like the NBA is like 75 or whatever % black. Like, that's not what I mean. I mean, like, what is the NBA itself outside of paying black people to play basketball for their entertainment? What are they doing in the community? I'm not saying they're doing nothing, but I'm saying like now is the time to do things or put in place certain actions or initiatives that you want to see continued. Again, not just through this restart, but in the future. Like I said, that money is more than just like, all right, it may only be like a one-time thing over how many ever years, but that can be beneficial for years and years to come. Like, this isn't just like a one-time, like, oh, we're going to paint this on the court, and then like because I mean, this fight, as anybody's talked about, and as we've talked about, and I've talked about, it's not going to be over come October when this ends. Like, it's not like, all right, we fixed racism, guys. Like, we're all good in this country. Like, that's not going to happen. It's not possible. You can't just eradicate that out of the foundation of the country in a couple months. So I'm like, are you going to keep Black Lives Matter on the court from here on out? Because, again, they're not going to stop mattering when you restart the season next year. But no one would expect them to do that, right? Because, again, this is all just like, oh, in the moment, what can we do? What can we do? All right. You can, again, I'm not saying they're not doing anything. But you can put initiatives in place, donate to things, help fund things like that. Like, that can begin to make steps towards making real change. Like I said, just having that paint on the court at this point does nothing for me. Again, maybe not everybody will agree with that stance, but for me, it just feels very performative. And that, like, we want to continue to show, like, oh, all right, yeah, we're with you, we're with you, we're with you. But then if your actions don't say that, then, like, what does it mean? Like, I mean, what was it? I think it was. I mean, you've seen. I forget if it was like Starbucks or like one of these establishments. I know there was a video that went viral, and again, it's hard to determine specifically because it cuts in and out. Like, if this is the full story of it, but I know there was a guy that was fired out. I forget if it was from Starbucks. It was some food establishment that because he was wearing a mask that said Black Lives Matter on. They're like, no, you can't wear that. You can't wear that in the store. Blah blah blah. But I imagine that same company put out a statement in support of Black Lives. So it's like you can say things to look good in the public eye, but once you get out of that eye, what are you doing behind that? And I think that's what I'm saying. That's where the NBA should be at, because we don't need to continue to see where you stand. We know where you stand at this point. That's my same logic behind, like, we don't need, now's not the time for more awareness. Because we've been stuck at home. It was on all the protests and everything was on the news for like 2 weeks. Again, granted, it's still going on. It's not covered as much. But that's a different story for a different podcast. But yes, I'm saying these things are happening. And still. So the awareness level is like, again, if you want to be aware, you're aware at this point. So that's not an issue for me. It's like, all right, now what steps can we take and what actions can we take to help make some sort of change? And I understand that the NBA can't solve everything. It's not their job to solve everything. So I'm not saying they have to solve everything. But putting initiatives and putting programs, things like that in place are better than just painting something on a court. Because again, it's not like the fight ends when the season ends. Like, it's still going to be going on. So unless you're going to do that for forever until all of this is gone, which it won't be. But until all this is gone, then what's the point? You're just doing it now because it's like the cool thing to do. Like we don't need, the NBA doesn't need to do that. That's basically long and short. But the NBA doesn't need to do that. Like, they're fine. Like, they have shown where they stand. They're allowing people to put statements. Maybe they can have wear shirts or whatever. Like, I don't hate the idea of having the WNBA players all say her name shirts in warm ups and throughout their restart, stuff like that. Like, all right, if you want to do that, fine. But you don't need the painting on the court. Like, that's unnecessary. You've seen that happen in states, and then on those same streets, police still brutalized protesters. So it's like, or they paint that, but then you ask them oh, are you going to do this or do that to help change the community? The mayors and the representatives in the state or legislatures, lawmakers, things like that are we can't really help you. So then it's what was the point? Because if you paint it up there to show that you somewhat care, then why not do anything beyond that? It just, like I said, it's all performative. To me, it's a cool photo. It's a cool oh, look at how I don't want to say woke. I hate that word, but look at how behind you guys or in support we are. But then it's all right, what else are you doing? Because at this point, I don't need that. That doesn't do anything for me, at least. Again, it's a way in which, in their minds, they can show support and call attention to it or whatever. But again, everyone's attention is there that wants it there. So, I mean, I guess it's in theory, it's the pushback would be oh, make sure people don't forget. Make sure people don't forget. Fine, but racism is not going to end when the season's over. So this fight isn't, just because the season's over doesn't mean the fight isn't still continuing. I've said that a lot, but you get the point. So for me, it's it's not necessary, but they're going to do it. So it is what it is. Speaking of things that interesting and may not and shouldn't be necessary, the NFL, there's a report that came out about some of the teams considering how they're going to travel for games because the NFL. It's not, we've talked about it, it's not possible to do the NFL in a bubble, in my opinion. With that being said, they're all right, how can we make the season and make it safe to a degree? And teams are trying to figure out ways to do that. And some of these travel plans are trying to configure that. So we'll talk about those, see if they make any sense. They kind of don't. But I'll tell you why I think that right after the break. So stay right there.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
This is from NBC Sports this time, had to switch it up for you guys. Can't just always go to ESPN. But apparently, the teams this season in the NFL are planning a potentially risky approach to traveling to road games. Per a league source, multiple teams intend to fly to and from road games on the day of the game. It was an idea that has been percolating for a while, something that Peter King floated a couple months ago, and it could be a reality. That said, there surely will be limitations. The 49ers play at the Jets in week 2. It wouldn't be practical to fly across country, play a game, and fly back all in the same. Like, that doesn't make any sense. I guess, assuming it's a 1 o'clock game, you're talking about you have to leave like the night before. Like, you'd have to leave like 1 o'clock in the morning. Probably even... No, you'd have to leave even earlier than that, honestly. Because it's like a 6-hour flight. Somewhere like 5-6 hours. You got to leave like 10 o'clock the night before. Fly there, get in, maybe get a couple hours of sleep, and then go from there. Like that doesn't seem realistic. But again, I'm just saying, that's why teachers and everybody in school be like, oh, no idea is a bad idea. And that's like... Or no... Well, they said no question's a bad question. This is a kind of similar concept, like, all right, we're just throwing ideas against the wall, see if they stick. Well, I disagree with that sentiment a little bit. I understand the point, and I guess this is kind of one of those things, but again, we'll flesh it out a little bit more, and we'll talk about my opinions of it in a moment. So another aspect or a factor that could kind of derail this plan is weather, which could force a team to change plans at the 11th hour and scramble to find hotel rooms on very short notice. The way things are going, that might not be that hard to do, again, because no one will be traveling, so there'll be a lot of hotel rooms open, but still. Then there's the possibility of an issue with the plane, which could delay kickoff by several hours or prevent a game from happening at all on the scheduled date. Of course, if fans won't be attending games, it becomes much easier to delay kickoff by several hours or to move a game from Sunday to Monday. If, for example, a thunderstorm can delay a game for a few hours, why can't a flight delay do the same? Fair. Whatever the complication, if the NFL decides to play as many as 256 regular season games that are scheduled to be played this year, flight delays or other travel issues won't cause games to be canceled. Only the virus will do that. And that is a fair point. So, traveling on the same day, in my opinion, that's like kind of crazy. Like, I get it. Like, here's the thing. All right, so let me start with this first. I get it. I understand, like, you are like, all right, how can we spend as little time away from our home base where, again, we may or may not have things under control. We may not be able to monitor the play. We will maybe be able to monitor the players better, make sure they're on top of things, make sure they're always wearing their masks or, like, being safe or not going anywhere was too dangerous, stuff like that. All right, when you're in whatever city you're normally in, you can do all that. It's easier to keep I don't want to say keep a leash on the players, but like you get my point. It's easier to keep tabs on them. But then, yeah, now you're flying to a new, or even just you kind of have an idea of what's going on in your city, you know. That. So, but I'm saying if you're going to be like, all right, if we got to fly to Florida or Texas, and you know, like, all right, the cases are like, again, this is assuming you're doing it now, so the cases are spiking. So you're like, we don't want to be there too long to potentially expose our team, stuff like that. So all right, you charter a flight, get to the airport, get to the hotel. I mean, not even get into the hotel, like go straight to the stadium. So you interact with as few people as possible, play the game, and then leave. While again, that sounds good because I understand this. Like, all right, if we don't think it's safe in this area, all right, we don't want to spend want to spend as little time there as possible to make sure that again we are the safety of everyone comes first, obviously, but the safety for a specific team, the safety of the players is paramount. So that part I understand. But at the same time, this just kind of, again, I've never been a professional athlete, but in general, everybody's used to a schedule. And by that I mean, like, all right, normally you have practice these days, you do this on this day, that on that day, you have your walkthroughs, you have your meetings, all that stuff. You fly out, get to the hotel, you rest, then you go and you have the game the next day. That's normally how these things go, at least in my head. I don't know exactly. I have to talk to an actual NFL player about that, but in my head, that's how these things go. But now, all right, you're completely scrapping that schedule, and I mean, I get that this year is kind of weird, so scrapping something is not like that shocking. But at the same time, athletes in general are creatures of habit. They don't, like, I mean, people do the exact same pregame routine every week. They eat the same meals every week. They dress the same way. They lace up their cleats the same way. They get dressed the same way. Like, anything that they think gives them a mental edge in the game, they're going to do. So now you're just completely scrapping that. And not only that, now you're having them fly at very odd times. Like, even, all right, say it's easy if you're going, like, from, like, Philly to New York. Or New Jersey, technically. Like, Philly to New Jersey. All right, that's like a hour and change drive. Like, you could take the train. I know they've taken the Eagles have taken the train down to D.C. when they play Washington. Like, that's not surprising. You could do that early morning. Or even if you don't want to do that, again, just charter the flight. It's like a 30-minute. Like, I don't think the flight would be that long. But you could do that real quick. Boom, you're there in a short time. Cool. But now, instead of, like, waking up and being able to wake up in your hotel room, get dressed, get ready to go to stadium, all that stuff, now you gotta wake up, get on a flight, be in the air, and then go straight to the game from there. 'Cause you're not checking into a hotel or whatever because you're not staying. And like I said, then once you're done, I mean, teams usually leave anyway, so that's not that abnormal. But like the flying in the day of, or traveling the day of, let me not say flying in, because not every place would be flying. But it's like, all right, what do you do if you're in Texas and you have a game in California or a game in Florida where it's like a 3-hour flight? Like, all right, now how does it work? Like, you tell me you're going to wake the people up? Well, I guess if you're going to California, you're going backwards, so that helps you a little bit. You're adding hours instead of losing them. But if you're in Texas, I believe then Florida's like an hour or two behind. So, all right, if you're doing that, then you gotta adjust for that. Now you leave even earlier just to make sure, like I said, make sure everything goes well. Because at least if you're there the night before, you know, all right, we made it to the stadium. Like, we made it to the city or the state where we need to play the game. There's no hiccups. Like, even if there's like, all right, there's some issues with the plane, all right, there's bad weather, we can't take off, whatever. Something's been malfunction. All right, cool. You have the day to like figure that out. You can still get there, even if it's late or whatever. You get in late, you just go to sleep, whatever. Now we're talking about, like, again, you're pushing games back. That not only messes you, but it messes up the other team. That messes up the workers. That messes up the TV crew, stuff like that. Because now, instead of having the game essentially start at 1, now you're starting a game like 3 or 4. And now, like, what does the network do for those first 2 hours where they're supposed to have a game on, and now they got to find additional programming? And like I said, and that doesn't even talk about, like, yeah, how do you can't fly across the country the same day and expect people to perform well in a game. Like, I mean, you can, but you can't do that and expect people to perform well in a game. Like, that's crazy. There's no way. That's why teams, I think it was, when again, this is an Eagles example. I think when they played, I think they had games against Seattle and LA back-to-back in 2017. And they stayed out there for after the Seattle game. They just stayed out on the West Coast, so they're like, why would we fly back, get used to East Coast time, and have to fly back out to the West Coast? That doesn't make any sense. So I'm like, all right, so yeah, so it's like even flying across the coast the same week is kind of like, you got to want to make sure. That's why, again, in theory, teams from the West Coast, they only have the 1 o'clock early game that Sunday. Usually, in theory, the East Coast team has the advantage. It doesn't always work out that way, but in theory, that's what the theory is. Like, all right, the East Coast team should have the advantage. They don't got to fly across country. They might not be jet lag, things like that. But regardless, in my opinion, it's just like that. There's so many variables that could go wrong trying to fly in and play a game the same day. Like, so many things that could go wrong. And I get it from the aspect of you want to try to be as safe as possible. And you want to try to expose as few people as possible. Like, that makes total sense. But the practicality of traveling more than like an hour of flight the same day and playing a game, it's like, all right, come on, what are we doing here? Like, what? Like, it sounds good in theory, but like that can't be the plan. It just can't be the plan, in my opinion. Again, everybody's entitled to their own opinions, but to me, I'm just like that can't be. All right, this is how we're going to make the season work. We're just going to have everyone fly in the day of. Like, there's so, like, you're asking for things to go wrong. And then, like, again, in fairness, like the article mentioned, like, if there's no fans, then it's easier to push games back or move them a day or whatever. But then again, if you just move them the day, like, if you can't get into the next day, then that's literally then that defeats the whole purpose of flying in, because the whole point is, like, to fly in so you don't have to deal with that. You can just go fly in, go to the game, leave. That's it. You're exposed to as few people as possible. Now, all of a sudden, you can't fly in until later on. You got to push the game to the next day. Then why don't you just fly in on Saturday? Like, it's just like, well, like, why even do that? And I mean, again, having teams flying around the country when, I mean, at least it's not now, but like, who knows how low or how high the cases will be in September, and then again, once we get into flu season in May. Maybe fine, maybe worse. We really don't know. But then just the thought process behind having teams fly around the country to play games in the middle of a pandemic sounds kind of nuts, especially when you would think enclosed spaces are easier for the virus to spread because there's nowhere for it to go. You're just recirculating the same air, which is why a lot of these places in like Texas and Florida have had to shut down, like bars and nightclubs and stuff have had to shut down. Again, not everyone, but some of them have had to shut down again because that's can lead to a lot of cases, and that's why some of I know in New Jersey at least, the governor said we're not doing indoor dining yet, which is what we were supposed to do it very soon, but we're just like we're seeing what's happening down in other states, and we're like, it might not be safe. And again, I'm not just saying if you go to a restaurant you're going to get it. Like, that's an absurd thing to say. But again, in theory, the enclosed spaces are an easier way for the virus to spread if someone already has it. It's the same reason why the bubble thing sounds good as long as no one inside the bubble gets the virus. Because if once it's inside the bubble, then you're asking for trouble. I didn't even mean to rhyme like that, but I got skills on the mic, so. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. Some people are gifted, some people aren't. I happen to be one of those that are blessed like that. I'm kidding. I can't rap. But the rhyme is cool. But yeah, that's why, like, again, in theory, I understand why Fauci was like, all right, we need to play football in a bubble, but that's not possible. And since that's not possible, they're going to do this flying around thing and hope for the best. It's kind of where they're at. Which seems like a very dubious strategy, but hey, it's the NFL. It wouldn't, if the strategy wasn't dubious, it would be like, oh, this doesn't seem right. So there's that. But yeah, I don't know if this travel thing's gonna work, and there's no even guarantee any teams will do that. But just the thought process of doing it, while in theory, again, makes sense. A lot of things make sense in theory. When you actually try to plan this out, it's like, You can only do that for certain games or for certain things. Like, it's just not possible to do that all the time. To fly the day of and like fly in, fly out the same day. Like, that's just not feasible. Every game. And not every game will you be playing within your little geographical area. So if you're going to do it like that, like where you're just like the MLB, we're just playing teams generally in your area, alright, yeah, no, you're good. You could probably do something like that. And plus they play like multiple games, which is a different point. But like, alright, you could fly in, fly out, stuff like that. If you were doing that, alright, but their NFL is trying to play the season like nothing's going on. So, flying around the country like that doesn't sound like the greatest idea. But hey, just one man's opinion. And speaking of a man's opinion, Brett Favre had some interesting things to say about how he thinks a particular quarterback on the Packers could be used similarly to Taysom Hill. So we'll talk about that and talk about teams' fascinations with trying to find a Taysom Hill when that's a lot easier said than done. So we'll discuss all that right after the break. Stay right there.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
GSMC Podcast Network. So, Brett Favre says he thinks, or at least he envisions, potentially the Green Bay Packers using Jordan Love the same way the Saints use Taysom Hill. Yes, apparently he said that. So this is from USA Today. Former Packers quarterback Brett Favre said the Green Bay Packers should deploy first round pick Jordan Love in much the same way that the New Orleans Saints use backup quarterback and former Packers training camp sensation Taysom Hill. That is, in an alternative role that takes advantage of his athleticism while allowing the starting quarterback, be it Drew Brees or Aaron Rodgers, to remain on the field. I think there's ways to incorporate it much like Taysom Hill with the Saints. Favre told TMZ, use him like a halfback pass, but occasionally let him run it just to show that you'll do it, something like that. Favre said he didn't think Rodgers would object to Love being used in that way, but did indicate again that the Packers star wasn't pleased with the decision to ignore other areas of need and move up in the draft to get a quarterback. My discussions with Aaron, Favre said, I never got the sense that he was upset that they signed a quarterback or gets drafted a quarterback, but more so didn't get immediate help. And it just sends the wrong message. Completely fair point. Something that Brett Favre isn't the first person to say. But yeah. So, this isn't just a Brett Favre thing. I know back when the Eagles drafted Jalen Hurts, the draft experts said it, the coaches, and I mean, I don't think Howie didn't say it, but Doug said it, that they could potentially use him like that. And I mean, use him in a Taysom Hill kind of role. And the issue I have with those statements is, one, Taysom Hill was an undrafted free agent. Granted, some of that was due to injuries and other things. But he was an undrafted free agent. For a reason. Main reason, he wasn't that good as a college quarterback. Let me just look up the statistics for you guys, because his college stats were not all that at all. Plus, again, like I said, he spent a lot of his time at BYU, unfortunately getting injured. So, strictly from a throwing standpoint, I think I thought he stayed 6 years. He only played 5 years. So, from a throwing standpoint, he had he played 6, 13, 5, 1, and 12 games in 5 years. So, only really completed 2 seasons. And in those 2 seasons, he did not complete over 60% of his passes, did not throw for over 3,000 yards, did not throw for more than 19 touchdowns, and in those 2 seasons, he had 14 and 11 picks, respectively. So, again, not really a guy that was a great passer, which is why the transition to this H-back hybrid role made some sense. Because, all right, you're not much of a passer, but running the ball as a sophomore, he ran for 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns. And then, as a redshirt senior, he ran for 600 yards and 8 touchdowns. He even ran for 8 touchdowns in 5 games in 2014. So, clearly, that was where he excelled a little bit more, in my opinion. Just as a runner. He's a good athlete. As shown by the fact that he ran, I think it was a 4.4 at his pro day. Well, I think it was this. Oh, yeah, I remember the game against... Oh, this is 2013. So this is this was my freshman year in college. He ran for, I think this was the game he ran for all those yards on Texas' defense, right? Yeah, he ran for 259, Jesus, and 3 touchdowns against Texas in a big time matchup and they stomped them too, 40-21. But yeah, so I'm saying his big moments or his big plays or some of his best highlights in college were him running the ball. So it was all right, it makes sense to where you're a good athlete. You probably don't have the arm or the accuracy to play quarterback at the next level. But you've been banged up and stuff, so we're not going to draft that high. But we think, all right, you could be an asset to our team. And granted, again, he was signed by the Packers, didn't obviously make the team, found his role with Sean Payton and the Saints. But then it's all right, so then cool, we'll do that. But even on top of that, so on top of the fact that he wasn't really that great of a passer in college, he's a great athlete. Again, ran a 4.4, had a 38.5-inch vertical, had a 10.2 broad jump, with potentially a tight quad at his pro day. And if you compare those to Christian McCaffrey, or compare those numbers to Christian McCaffrey, who arguably the best running back in the league, arguably was the best running back in the year he came out and was very athletic. He only ran a 4.48. Again, I don't want to say only, but Taysom Hill was a 4.44 though. Again, it's pro day, so maybe it's a little faster. Maybe he was probably a 4.5 guy, but doesn't look slow on the field. He had a 10.1 broad jump and a 37.5-inch vertical, and he weighed less than Taysom Hill weighed. So again, we're not talking about a guy that's just an average athlete. And no, not to say that Jordan Love is a bad athlete, but at the combine he ran a 4.7, had only a 35.5-inch vertical, and I think he didn't have because 10 is 12 inches in a foot. That'd be 120. He had a 118-inch broad jump, but just a little less than Taysom Hill's. So again, he's not nearly the athlete. Doesn't have the speed. I don't know if he's ever had to block anybody before. I don't know if he's ever had to run any routes, catch the ball. Taysom Hill is, or very well maybe, a one-of-one kind of person. Granted, the Saints did try to draft his ideal of what you would envision as his replica in Tommy Stevens, because he was a guy at Penn State, at least, that was used kind of like a Taysom Hill. They were giving him jet sweeps. They were faking the ball with him. They were running him and Trace were not always, but on the field at the same time. They're both in the action. Maybe he'd run a route, stuff like that. They use him. He didn't have to block as much as Taysom Hill will block. But hey, it's just in theory. All right, this is the guy that could do that. Plus, again, he's on all the special teams. So it's not just that they use him on offense, which they do, but they use him on punt return, kickoff return. He just plays because he's just a football player. He may not be a good quarterback or good this or good that, but he's just a very solid football player, period. And some people are just like that. I know you see the same thing in high school guys that are like a quarterback, but they're like really good running the ball, and like they play like linebacker or like safety and on the other side. Like they're just like good football players. They might not necessarily be good at or great at one thing, but good athletes, and they're good football players. They're good instincts and stuff like that. So I'm saying the idea behind like, oh yeah, we'll just use Jordan Love or we use Jalen Hurts in this light makes very little sense to me. One, because these are high priority draft picks. Like you don't draft a guy in the first round to use him like Taysom Hill. That's not the point. You draft him because you think, all right, this can be the heir apparent to Aaron Rodgers. This is the guy that we think could lead us to a Super Bowl championship and be an MVP caliber player, all that kind of stuff. If you believe that about Jordan Love, which is what I think they believe because they traded up for him, you don't use that guy just willy-nilly on the field. Like that makes zero sense. And the similar thing, especially when he may very well be the backup quarterback. They use Taysom Hill like that, but he's not officially the backup quarterback. They had Teddy for 2 years before that. Then they had Jameis this year. So you have guys that, like, if something were to happen to Drew Brees, Taysom Hill wouldn't have to step in, and you could still use that. You still have that aspect of the offense. Like, he's not, like, officially the backup, I don't think. And granted, we don't know what the depth chart would look like with New Orleans this year, because I don't know how much better Jameis will be now that his eyes got fixed. But they have to have a good third quarterback on the roster so that you can still do the Taysom Hill stuff, even if the starter gets hurt. Even though, I mean, in theory, he could be the starter next year. We'll see about all that. But you get the point. Again, the Saints didn't have to use a high draft pick on him to do that role. And I get every offense is different. Things evolve, things change. I know the Wildcat was kind of a new thing. Then people tried it. It was like, it worked for the Dolphins that 1 year, but then like it kind of didn't work once teams figured it out. And not to say that teams are going to figure out the Taysom Hill thing, because he's just a good football player. He's physical, he's big, he's fast. Like they can be better prepared for it, but you're not gonna. Same thing. Like, all right, I don't imagine teams go into every week saying we're going to let Michael Thomas catch 10 balls, but like it happens. Sometimes the football player is better than your game plan. That happens. So there's no guarantee just because like, all right, yeah, it's not going to be figured out the same way the Wildcat can be figured out. Because if you just scheme against it, you can solve schemes. In my opinion, you can't solve good players. Good players transcend schemes. They create schemes. They are the scheme. So you don't need, like I said, you don't need to like, all right, we need to, if you figure out this quote unquote scheme, it doesn't mean you're going to shut them down because they can perform outside of the structure of that scheme kind of thing. But yeah, just like, I understand NFL and football is a copycat league. So you're seeing somebody have success with this and you're like, all right, there are good athletes that may also be able to throw the ball. Let's find a way to utilize them. Cool. I get that. But again, Taysom Hill isn't just used to like as a wild. This isn't like the Wildcat. He's on the field a lot. They use him like in line, like tight end. They use him in the backfield. They use him in the slot. Like he's all over the field. Unless you're going to line up Jordan Love or Jalen Hurts all over the field with Aaron Rodgers back there taking the snap, like that doesn't make any sense. Or the few times where you just have him back there, like doing zone read or read option plays, or just having him drop back to throw. And if you're fine with taking Aaron Rodgers off the field to do that, or taking Carson Wentz off the field to do that, I mean, hey, more power to you. But this isn't, like I said, this isn't just that simple. It's like, oh, we're just going to use him like Taysom Hill. Because again, the way the Saints deploy Taysom Hill from what I've seen in games, again, I don't watch the All-22, I don't have the coaches film, all that fancy stuff. I just watch the games. And I'm like, he'll be out there, first play of the game, be in the entire drive. Just so they can line him up so many different places. Is that what you think you can do with Jordan Love? Is that what you should want to do with Jordan Love, who may very well be the future of your franchise? Similar thing with Jalen Hurts. Is that what you want to do with Jalen Hurts? I mean, granted, I don't know if necessarily he's been drafted to be the heir apparent or to take Carson Wentz's place, but I believe he's an insurance policy, and why would you have two quarterbacks out there at the same time if he's supposed to be the insurance policy? Granted, for this year, they'll have Sudfeld, but after this year, he's probably going to be the number 2. How do you, unless they're going with the whole, I know I saw the quarterback's coach / like passing game coordinator, Press Taylor, he was talking about like this new 2-quarterback system that's going to take the league by storm eventually. Maybe that's what they're trying to implement. And again, maybe I'll be wrong about that working, but until that happens, like just having your backup quarterback and your starting quarterback on the field at the same time, just for fun, sounds like a disaster. Especially when your quarterback, and Jalen Hurts is a better athlete than Jordan Love. So there's that. But I think Taysom Hill's also like, he's not like a small guy. I'm trying to think, well, what's Taysom Hill's size looking like? He is, no, he's only 6'2". It'd be interesting. Thought he was taller. But yeah, so I guess, okay, only 6'2". But again, receiver-wise, 6'2" is like not short. But he's not like a skinny guy. He is, I'm trying to see, how much does it say he weighs? Like 6'2", 220, that's solid. Like that's a solid, big, strong guy. Jordan Love does not look like that. Jalen Hurts, he's a little bit more built in my opinion. But Jordan Love is like he's like 6'4". Yeah, he's like 6'4", I looked it up. He's 6'4", 224. So he weighs the same, or about the same as Taysom Hill, but he's 2 inches taller. So again, it's a little bit thinner. And also, Jordan Love, he wasn't a running quarterback at Utah State. That's not what he did. So why are you trying to force him into that role? That's all I'm saying. Don't try to force people. Let them do what they do well. Don't try to be like, oh, we want to do this and use him like this, use him like that. Not everybody can do that. Maybe Tebow could have done that, and maybe he would still be in the league or would have been in the league longer, let me say that, because he's like in his mid-30s now. So maybe he would have been in the league longer if he did, but that was mainly because he wasn't that good of a quarterback. If you think this guy can play quarterback, then just keep him at quarterback, in my opinion. There's no reason to be mismatching him and stuff like that. And also, Tebow's a bigger guy, so you would think, all right, maybe he could handle some of that blocking stuff or run the routes. But again, he didn't run a 4.4. That's the thing. That's the thing people forget. Like, Taysom Hill is, like, legitimately fast, which is why he can be a tight end, be a receiver, run routes, stuff like that, because he's got, like, legit receiver speed. Like, Jalen Hurts is a little bit faster, but 4.7's not, I mean, that's like AB speed, but, I mean, you got to be able to have AB's footwork, and Jordan Love's not going to have that, so, like, what are you doing? And again, like I said, he's not, like, that fast. So, this is a trend I see. People would be like, oh, we're going to find the next Taysom Hill. Unless you're going to use him like Taysom Hill, you're not finding the next Taysom Hill. You're just finding a Wildcat quarterback by a different name, basically, is what you're doing. So, yeah, unless you're going to use him at receiver, tight end, H-back, running back, quarterback, on having return kicks, if you want to do that, if you want to find that guy, cool, by all means. But if you're not finding that guy, then you're not finding Taysom Hill. You're exposing your backup quarterback to more hits than he should. And you're spending a high draft pick to do it. Sean Payton did this that they signed him. I guess they picked him up off of waivers or something. Like, this is not the same. But teach his own. And speaking of Sean Payton and doing smart things and stuff like that, CBS Sports has been releasing all these different top 10s regarding the NFL, like top 10 safeties, top 10 corners, top 10 this, tight ends, receivers, whoever. And a lot of their lists have gotten a lot of pushback, but I mean, every list gets pushback. It's like, all right, how don't you have this person? How don't you have that person? Or this person's there, that person's there. Like, how could you, blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of critiques to go around, and I've done my fair share of critiques. And they're going to continue, because this coaches list, I don't like it. So we're going to talk about it, and then I'm going to give you how I would have configured the top 10, just because I think there are some people a little too high, some people a little too low, all that fun stuff. So we'll discuss that right after the break. Stay right there.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and One Championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
By CBS Sports HQ. Got a lot of flack when it happened, not surprising. But, hey, these things happen. People see a list on social media, they don't like it, and then they lash out. So this list, as I said, they've done a bunch of these different lists. This list was the top 10 coaches in the NFL, according to a certain... that's the other thing. They've been cycling Twitter users, so it's not like the same guys. These like different people make different lists. So it's not even this is all like one guy's opinions. Like they've had different people for different things. So this specific one was by @Sean J. Wagner, and his top 10 went as follows: Bill Belichick 1, Andy Reid 2, John Harbaugh 3, Sean Payton 4, Shanahan 5, McVay 6, Mike Tomlin 7, Pete Carroll 8. Doug Peterson 9, and Mike Zimmer 10. And now, before I get into the list specifically, I feel like one of the things that people do, they want a lot of engagement on their post, a football post, is just say something about an Eagles player. Good, bad, whatever. Just say, or coach. Just say something. I know a lot of the flack, and I mean it's not just Eagles coaches, because again, Doug Peterson wasn't the only coach that was slighted, in my opinion. But a lot of the pushback came from Eagles players. I mean, not Eagles players, Eagles fans, and then Eagles fans and Tomlin fans, also Steelers fans. So, like those were the two big ones. Because like, whoa, how did some of these guys ahead of them? How do they have these? How were they rated this highly? But yeah, so he definitely got a lot of pushback from the Eagles fans. Doubled down on it, which doubling down. While I do support it, because again, it shows that you're not just like easily swayed by public opinion. If you don't have a good explanation for why he doubled down, it just makes you look worse. And his double down was not much better, because again, obviously the big one a lot of people talk about was Sean McVay, especially when Doug has beaten him head to head twice. He's actually won a Super Bowl. He went up against the Patriots and didn't score only 3 points. Like I go on. I'm not going to sit here and spend this whole time bashing on McVay. But, so that's where he got a lot of pushback from, and again, understandably so. But that's just this thing I noticed. So Eagle fans out there, you don't have to engage with every tweet or every post or everything you see that you think slights an Eagles player. Because I feel like sometimes people just do that on purpose because they know it'll get the engagement numbers up on a post. Because, like I said, Eagles fans, or not just Eagles, Philly fans in general, support their own if they like you. Now, if they don't like you, it can be a little rough. Look at Nelson Aguilar. But, I mean, he about just couldn't catch. So, it is what it is. But if they like you or they support you, they're going to ride for you hard. So, shout out to Sixers, or not Sixers, but also Sixers, but Philly fans for that. Like, Philly is definitely a sports town. Like, there are a lot of towns where, like, the fans are like, kind of whatever. Like, the Philly fans are always into it. They're not the only fan base like that, or the only town like that, but they are into all their sports. Like, if you're from Philly and don't like one of the 4 major teams, like, everyone looks at you weird. Fair, but they do. So, like I said, that's how much they care about sports. So, like, you have to ride for the city. So, shout out to that. But, so, alright, you can take the first 2 coaches. Boom, those are good. It's kind of like the quarterbacks, I feel like. Even though some people are indifferent about Lamar Jackson, I think if you win an MVP, that kind of, like, validates you a little bit, in my opinion. But the first 2 coaches, Belichick, Reid, those are solid locks. Cool, you can't really debate those. Everything else after that is where things can get jumbled up. So you got John Harbaugh at 3, who is a solid coach. I'm not trying to disparage him and say he's a bad coach at all. But he won his last Super Bowl 8 years ago? I think it was 2012. That sounds right? Like, that sounds like, well, obviously, it was 49ers, Ravens. I remember that, but I don't remember exactly what the year was. So he won it then. Again, they gave Flacco all that money. Kind of fell off after that. Then they got to Lamar, and now they're back on top. But I know I give a little bit bonus points for head coaches that also control a side of the ball. Like, Belichick may not call the plays anymore, but he's still more or less in charge of the defense. Same way Andy Reid might not always call the plays, but it's Andy Reid's offense. Not to say that Harbaugh, being a special teams coach, he can definitely relate to players on both sides of the ball, and apparently he's good at whatever in-game stuff works. But it's just like I give coaches a little bit of benefit of the doubt if they have to do all the head coach stuff on top of creating the offensive or defensive game plan and stuff like that, especially when they're good. Like, if they're bad, then like, all right, no, delegate that to somebody else. But if they're good at it, and you can keep that, then I give you bonus points for that. Sean Payton, while again Super Bowl winner, it does have that on his resume. But, and I think I might save this for a topic on Thursday. But I feel like the Saints are the Boston Celtics of the NFL in that, because bear with me here, in that they're the 2008 Celtics. So by that I mean like their one Super Bowl has raised the stock of their players and coaches higher than maybe it's rightfully deserved, and they've gotten a lot of mileage out of it. Excuse me. So yeah, I think I might flesh that point out more on the next podcast or a future podcast episode. I'm like, all right, Sean Payton, they won a Super Bowl last decade, have not been back since then, have had many mediocre seasons after that, mainly led by poor defenses. So it wasn't Drew Brees or Sean Payton's fault, but again, he's the head coach. When you're head coach, you don't just coach the offense or just coach the defense. You have to control everything. So if the defense is bad, that's on you too, even if you're not necessarily calling the plays. Like, that's a part of your team that's bad. You hire the defense coordinator. You are part of the draft picks. I imagine you're part of the free agent signings. So it's not like you are completely out of it. Plus, also the Super Bowl that they did get to and win, there was some bounties involved. So gotta look at that. Shanahan at 5. While I do like him, great, one of the best play calls in the league, definitely. I mean, I don't think he had a winning season as a head coach before this year. Though, again, he had quarterback situation issues before this. This is the first year he's really had his guy, Jimmy G, healthy for the full season. So there's that. But also, got to the big game now twice, once as the coordinator, once as the head coach, and squandered the lead both times. Not the greatest look. McVay, obviously the boy wonder, came out the gates hot. I think his first year was 11-5 or whatever. They finished the 3 seed, lost in the first round though, at home. The next year they went to the Super Bowl, scored only 3 points, and this year they missed the playoffs. So not all their fault. Their offensive line wasn't as good. Jared Goff stunk. Todd Gurley was hurt. It happens. Then you got Mike Tomlin, who won a Super Bowl, but that again, another guy that was a while ago. But I mean, he led a team to 8-8. With Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges quarterbacking the team. Like, let's give him a little bit more credit. He's held, and if you see the way Antonio Brown and like the personalities he had to deal with in his time in Pittsburgh, the fact that he held those teams together, along with Big Ben and everybody else, kind of impressive, personally. Pete Carroll, another guy who, his best success was a little while ago. But still, that mainly, I don't know if it's him or it's Russell Wilson, but that team's in the playoff hunt every year. Now, would I argue that they could do a better job around Russell Wilson in terms of not having him just literally have to carry the offense? Yes. But, hey, whatever Pete Carroll sells, people seem to buy. So, I gotta give him credit for that. Then you got Doug at 9. I mean, outside of his rookie year, which he went 7-9 in the season, which is right tackle, Lane Johnson missed 10 games because he was suspended. So that hurts they started a rookie at right tackle. That's going to hurt any team. I mean, if you think about it, Lane Johnson, I think they were 5-1 in the games he played that year. So again, I'm not gonna say they were going to be the best team in football or anything. Their offense was not like that good. The skill position players were not that good. But, I mean, it's conceivable to believe that if they have Lane Johnson for a full 16 games, or at least, okay, let's say not full, so let's say like 14, like, because you can miss a game to injury here or there. So say like 14 games. It's reasonable to believe they win more than 7. Now his first year he's going 8-8, potentially 9-7. They might not make the playoffs, but you look at him differently. And then, like I said, next year went on best team in football, won the Super Bowl. Quarterback should have been the MVP, but I've touched on that already. Won Super Bowl with the backup. Fought through injuries. In the last 2 years, the teams have been ravaged by injuries at different positions. Still made the playoffs. Like, I mean, other people get injuries like, oh, they didn't happen. Oh, you didn't make the playoffs of this, that, and the third. Eagles have all those issues, have had a ton of people miss games due to injuries. Some of the, probably, if not the highest, one of the highest in terms of, like, missed games by starters due to injury in the league over the last 2 years, and still made the playoffs both years. And could have potentially won a playoff game in 3 straight years had Clowney not had a dirty hit on Carson Wentz, and then you got Mike Zimmer rounding out the top 10, and that seems fair. That seems fair. So, personally, if I were to configure this, all right, so you keep the top 2 the same. I'm moving Doug, and I'm moving Tomlin into the top 5. I think. Okay, so I think I'll keep Harbaugh. So if I were going to do this, I might move, because I think Doug is a top 3 coach in the league, but I'm probably biased. You're going to say that. So I think you could argue, like, I mean, if like Doug made the playoffs with the Eagles during the last 4 games, they have to go on a 4-game winning streak with literally dudes off the street playing receiver. Again, was the competition great? No. And even still, they kept it close with the Seattle team that maybe they shouldn't have. So they had all those injuries at the receiver positions, plus their right guard misses. He's hurt. Plus, Zach Ertz was playing hurt. Plus, I don't think Lane Johnson played that day. I think he was hurt. And then Carson Wentz goes out, obviously. And then McCown's playing on like torn not ACLs, hamstrings. And he still could have won that game if McCown was just better in the red zone. So, I'm putting Doug in the top 5. So I'm gonna go Doug, Tomlin, Harbaugh. Now I go Doug, Harbaugh, Tomlin. Those are my top 5. So 3, 4, 5. Then I think I'll keep Peyton 6. I'll move Pete Carroll up to 7. Then Shanahan and McVay are interchangeable, but I'll move McVay up to 8. Shanahan down to 9, and Zimmer to 10. Now, again, that's just my list. And I think Kyle Shanahan's probably a top 2 offensive play caller in the league, personally. I mean, the schemes he has, the way he's able to get people open and the ball in space, like Liddy Anytime is once his run design concepts, the way he just is able to exploit different defenses, absurd. But, like I said, his head coaching record, not great. And he's now jagged 2 Super Bowls. Again, one is the offensive coordinator, one is the head coach. Both of them had leads in the fourth. Well, the Falcons one, we know about that. But the Niners one had leads in the fourth quarter. They had a lead in the fourth quarter. So they had a lead in the fourth quarter, but not that much, like half the quarter left, and the offense just couldn't do anything down the stretch. Now, granted, if Jimmy G hits, I think it was Emmanuel Sanders not deep down the field, does my list look different? Yes. But that didn't happen. They didn't use Jimmy G the 2 games before because they knew it was possible that in crunch time he would do that. And yet here we are. So I feel pretty solid about that list. So you got Bill, like I said, Bill, Andy, Doug. That's the one that's going to get argued. I can live with it. I think I'll go Tomlin for Harbaugh, Peyton, Carroll, then McVay, just because he's had more success than Shanahan. Then Shanahan, and then just keep Zimmer at 10. That's fine. I feel like that's a solid. That's a solid 10. You could probably move. I mean, I could argue to moving Harbaugh down a little bit too, but he's won a Super Bowl, so I feel like that should count for something. Like, how do you have Tomlin, Carroll, and Doug 7, 8, 9 behind guys like Shanahan and McVay? When, granted, Shanahan and McVay have been coaching less, but not for a less period of time. But Tomlin won a coaching first. Tomlin, Carroll, and Doug all. Well, I mean, Carroll's different because he was a head coach before, and then went to college and came back. But when they got to Seattle, he won. He was successful very early on. Won a Super Bowl very early. Tomlin won a Super Bowl very early. Doug won a Super Bowl very early in their coaching careers. And Doug's been a head coach just about as long as Shanahan and McVay have. I think it's only been like 1 year more. So, by year 2, he was already Super Bowl champ. Same with Tomlin, I believe. Like Shanahan and McVay, where you at? I'm just saying, it's a fair thing to question. I think, like, again, every list is subjective. You guys will disagree with my list. It's fine. I probably do have Doug too high, but I think in terms of what he's had to deal with the last 2 years and the fact that the Eagles have still stayed relevant and made the playoffs is a testament to him, specifically. His play calling may be a little shoddy from time to time, but as a coach and able to get people to buy in and believe in whatever it is that you're selling, which is a tough thing for 53 grown men to do, he's good at that. Like, you can't argue that. And like I'm saying, no one's really ever had any issues with him. No one's talked bad about him when they left. Everybody loved Doug. Everybody enjoyed playing for Doug, generally speaking. So I feel like it's hard to not have him up there. Plus, again, he has the success to back it up. So, I mean, again, teach his own, but I feel like that list could definitely use some work, personally. Like I said, you get to 8-8 with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph. You can't be that's top 5 coaching in the league, easy. And like I said, you talk about dealing with AB, Le'Veon, Big Ben, Mike Wallace, Emmanuel Sanders, Martavius Bryant, like different guys that they've had circled, James Harrison, different guys they've had circled through the Steelers organization, and still maintain success for a majority of that time. That's impressive. They were trying to run him out of there last year, but now they're like, oh, well, we could do a lot worse. And yeah, the Steelers could do a lot worse. There's not that many coaches out there better than Mike Tomlin. Again, I only have 3, so. But that's just me. But yeah, that'll do it for me here today on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. I want to thank you guys for listening, as always. And if you haven't already, I don't know why you wouldn't, but if you haven't, please make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode. Make sure you're always on top of when we drop our latest stuff. Also, if you could please as well, give us a 5-star rating, write us a nice review. You're very appreciated, very helpful. Allow us to see what you guys like, what you guys dislike, the ways we can improve, all that fun stuff. And also, if you're on social media, we're on social media, so you can find us there. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We can talk, we can chat, we can debate, we can discuss. Talk about your top 10 coaches. I'd love to see some of your lists. You could talk about the idea of teams trying to find the next Taysom Hill. I think it's easier said than done. You can talk about what's going to happen with minor league and farm systems in baseball. Now there's going to be no season, and they're going to have to start from scratch next year. Talk about the idea of, like, do you like the spring football idea that the Ivy League's proposing for college at least? I don't hate it. Honestly, like I said, I don't hate it. I think it's much safer, more reasonable than trying to play the season as if nothing's going on in the country, because that just doesn't sound feasible to me. But hey, we'll see. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychic. I can't predict the future, so maybe I'll be wrong about that, but we shall see. Also, as I always like to do, shout out to the essential workers out there. So grocery store people, the stockers, baggers, cart guys, and gals. Again, not to say that just guys do those jobs. Shout out to them. Shout out to the EMTs, doctors, nurses, firefighters, everybody, delivery drivers, like I said, Amazon, warehouse people too. So Amazon, UPS, FedEx, the Postal Service, all those guys. shout out to you. You are doing jobs and making everyone else's life easier. So, least they could do is give you thanks for that and appreciation for that. Again, it's your job, but like, it is making things easier for everybody else that you were doing your job and doing it well, even in the middle of a pandemic, which is unfortunate to you. But again, shout out for you for doing those things. Also, like I said, if you're going to be out, just wear a mask. It's not that hard. You can breathe. I promise you. I promise you. People with literal breathing problems say that they can breathe fine in a mask. You're not wearing it that long if you're just wearing it in a store. Doctors, dentists, all these people wear masks all like for hours on end. They seem to not pass out. You're just going to get some groceries. It doesn't hurt anybody to wear a mask. It doesn't even hurt you. But hey, like I said, it's just me. Just like so we don't like you just don't want to spread it. That's all it is. There's every other major country has had strict lockdown rules and to force people to wear masks. Haven't made it political because it shouldn't be a political issue, and they don't have these random spikes in cases that the USA is clearly going through. There are many reasons for those spikes, but they could be solved if more people would just wear a mask when they went outside. It's that simple. To me, at least. But hey, what do I know? But yeah, that'll do it for me. I've been Chris Blades. That has been my time. And until next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.